Darkness pressed in from every side. It was not the gentle dark of night beneath the trees, nor the familiar hush that followed a moonset. This darkness was thick, heavy, alive. It clung to Celeste's skin, filled her lungs, crawled into her ears until even the sound of her own breath felt more foreign than silence. Cold stone bit into her cheek. Celeste gasped and immediately regretted it. The air was stale, sour with the rot of damp earth and something far older. Death. Her head throbbed as if it had been split open and carelessly stitched back together. Pain radiated behind her eyes, sharp and disorienting, and when she tried to move, her limbs answered sluggishly, as though they no longer belonged to her. Where? Panic surged, sudden and violent. She pushed herself upright, fingers skidding against rough stone. Her nails scraped uselessly as she reached out, hands shaking, desperate for anything familiar. The walls were close, too close, uneven, cold, unyielding, stone, on all sides, above her, beneath her. Her chest tightened, breath came faster, shallower. Her wolf stirred, restless and confused, pacing the edges of her mind. Not injured, no, but wrong, disoriented, muzzled by something thick and poisonous that dulled their connection, wrapped her instincts in fog. No moon, no sky, no way out. Celeste staggered to her feet, only to slam shoulder first into a wall she hadn't known was there. Pain flared. She bit back a cry, clapping a hand over her mouth as if someone, anyone, might hear her. But no one would. The truth crept in slowly, like water seeping through cracked stone. This was not a cave, not a cell. This was a tomb. The smell confirmed it. Old bones, dry rot, the lingering echo of lives long ended. Her stomach lurched violently, and she bent forward, retching despite the emptiness of her gut. "No," she whispered hoarsely. "No, no!" Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She turned in place, arms outstretched, mapping the space with trembling hands. Narrow, enclosed, a coffin carved from stone. A memory flickered, fragmented, distant, moonlight on fur. The forest rushing past as she ran, muscles burning in the sweetest way, wind tearing joy from her lungs. Laughter, not spoken, but felt, shared through the bond she had known all her life. Dominic. Her brother's wolf racing beside her, powerful and confident. The same way he had always been when they ran together. Free of fear, free of consequence. The memory sharpened. The ancient tomb rising from the earth like a scar, stone doors etched with the sigils of their bloodline, the resting place of their parents, sacred, untouched. Her heart pounded harder. "I swear it," Dominic's voice echoed in her mind, solemn and thick with emotion. "Before mother and father. I swear I will always love you. I will protect you, Celeste, for as long as I live." She remembered the way her chest had tightened then, not with fear, but with pride, with relief. How foolish that seemed now. Her hands began to shake violently. She remembered stepping closer, remembered hugging him, her cheek pressed to his shoulder, the familiar scent of home wrapping around her like safety. Then, a sting. Sharp, sudden, burning at her neck. Her vision blurring, her knees buckling. "No," Celeste whispered aloud as the memory snapped fully into place, merciless and complete. The needle, the way Dominic's arms had tightened, not to steady her, but to hold her still. His voice in her ear, shaking. "I'm sorry. I can't let you ruin this. I've worked too hard." The stone doors grinding shut. The sound had echoed forever. Celeste's legs gave out. She collapsed to the cold floor, the impact jarring her already screaming skull. A sound tore from her throat then, not a scream, but something smaller. Broken, primal. He had done this. Her brother, the boy she had starved for, bled for, protected with her body and her soul. He had sealed her in a tomb. Grief crushed her harder than the stone ever could. It hollowed her out, left her gasping, shaking, curling in on herself as if she could disappear into the dark. She had been silenced, discarded, buried alive. For a long moment, minutes, hours, she could not tell. She lay there, sobbing quietly, her tears soaking into ancient dust. Fear lingered, yes, but something else slowly rose beneath it, heavier and hotter. Betrayal. And then, beneath even that, resolve. Celeste drew a ragged breath and forced herself to sit up. Her body trembled. Her wolf whined weakly, but it did not retreat. It waited. "They don't get to end me like this," she whispered into the darkness, her voice raw but steadying with each word. "You don't get to end me like this." Her fingers curled against the stone, nails biting into grit until pain grounded her. "I will not die here." The darkness did not answer, but somewhere deep within her, something fierce and unbroken stirred and listened. The first thing Celeste remembered after their parents died was hunger. Not the sharp, passing ache that came from missing a meal, but the slow, gnawing emptiness that curled in her stomach and stayed there, day after day, until it became a familiar companion. Hunger that made the world feel dimmer, colder. Hunger that taught her very quickly how to lie. "I already ate," she would tell Dominic, pushing the bowl toward him with a small smile that fooled no one but a grieving boy who wanted desperately to believe her. Their cottage, once warm with laughter and the scent of cooked meat, became a hollow shell. Wind slipped through cracks in the walls. Ash settled thick in the hearth because there was nothing left to burn. The bed they shared at night was too small, too cold, and Celeste would curl around Dominic, her body a barrier against the chill, against nightmares, against a world that suddenly seemed eager to swallow them whole. She was barely more than a girl herself when the pack decided she was old enough to endure. Grief made wolves cruel. The adults looked at them with thinly veiled pity and thicker disdain. Two orphaned pups with no rank, no protection, no future worth investing in. Help came rarely, and when it did, it came with conditions. Work too hard for too little. Favors whispered in corners. Expectations she learned to refuse long before she fully understood them. Dominic grew fast. Too fast. His shoulders broadened early, his wolf fierce and restless beneath his skin. He burned with ambition, with a desperate need to claw his way out of the pit they had been thrown into. But hunger weakened him. Fear distracted him. And the pack noticed. So did their cruelty. When Dominic missed a shift during training, it was Celeste who stepped forward. "He's sick," she said calmly, though her voice shook. "Punish me instead." The lash cracked across her back like fire. She did not scream. She bit her tongue until she tasted blood and stood there, rigid and silent, while Dominic watched with wide, horrified eyes. Later, alone in the dark, he cried and begged her never to do it again. She had only smiled and pressed his head to her chest. "It's my job," she told him. "I'm your sister." It became a pattern. If Dominic was late, Celeste answered for him. If he spoke out of turn, Celeste bowed her head and accepted blame. If fists were raised, they found her first. Bruises bloomed and faded. Scars stitched themselves into her skin like quiet records of devotion. She learned how to fall so it hurt less, how to stand so pain didn't show, how to swallow fear and anger alike until they settled heavy in her bones, and still, it was never enough. The pack began to whisper when she refused mates. At first, the offers were polite, young wolves testing interest, elders suggesting alliances that might help her situation. Celeste declined them all with the same steady answer. "I'm not ready." Soon, politeness curdled into mockery. "She thinks she's better than us. Too proud for her own good. There's something wrong with her. Unnatural." The word followed her through the village like a curse. Celeste pretended not to hear, but the weight of it pressed down all the same. In their world, a woman's worth was measured in bonds and bloodlines, in the strength of the wolf she tied herself to. Refusing a mate was more than stubbornness, it was defiance. Dominic noticed the look she got, the way conversations hushed when she passed, the way some wolves stared at her with open hostility, as if her choices were a personal insult. "You don't have to keep doing this," he told her one night, voice tight with frustration. "If you took a mate, things would be easier." Celeste stirred the thin stew over the fire, dividing it carefully, giving him the fuller portion. "Easier for who?" "For you," he said. "For both of us." She finally looked at him then. Really looked at the shadows under his eyes, the hunger he tried to hide, the fury that simmered beneath his skin. "If I protect you enough," she said softly, "the world won't break you." Dominic flinched, as if struck. He hated that sentence, hated what it implied, that he needed protecting, that his strength wasn't enough. But Celeste believed it with every part of her. She believed love was a shield. That sacrifice was armor, that if she stood between him and the worst of the world, he would one day stand tall enough to never need her there again. Dominic trained harder than any wolf his age. He pushed himself until his muscles screamed, until his shifts left him shaking and exhausted. He learned to fight with precision and rage, every blow fueled by a promise he never spoke aloud. One evening, after a brutal training session that left his knuckles split and bleeding, he sat beside Celeste on the cottage steps. The sky burned orange and red, the sun sinking like a dying ember beyond the trees. "I won't always be like this," he said suddenly. Celeste said nothing. She waited. "I'll rise," Dominic continued, jaw clenched. "I'll earn a rank, power, respect. No one will ever look down on us again." "Us." He turned to her then, eyes fierce, shining with something close to devotion. "I swear it, Celeste. Everything you've done, everything you've given up, I'll repay it. One day you won't have to protect me anymore. I'll protect you." The words wrapped around her heart, warm and hopeful. She smiled, tired but proud, and leaned her head against his shoulder. She never imagined the day would come when protection would turn into a blade, and she would be the one left bleeding. Dominic did not cry when he told her. That was the first thing Celeste noticed, the stillness in him. The way his shoulders were locked too tight. The way his jaw trembled as if he were holding something savage behind his teeth. They sat on the floor of their cottage, backs against the wall, a single candle between them. Outside, the pack slept. Inside, a truth waited to be spoken. "I can't," he said finally, staring at his hands. "I've tried. Herbs, healers, moonlights." His laugh was thin and hollow. "Nothing changes." Celeste's breath caught. She did not need him to say the words. In their world, some truths were understood before they were named. Her wolf recoiled first, instinct screaming danger, and then her mind followed. "You mean children?" she whispered. Dominic nodded once, a sharp, broken motion. "I can't give them." The candle flickered violently, as if the flame itself understood what that meant. Infertility was not just weakness among wolves, it was condemnation. Bloodlines were sacred, continuity was survival. A wolf who could not produce an heir was seen as broken, useless, a threat to the future of the pack. Such wolves disappeared quietly, or violently. Celeste's fear was immediate and absolute. "This can never leave this room," she said, gripping his arm so hard her fingers hurt. "Do you hear me? Never." Dominic pulled away, shame flashing hot in his eyes. "I'm not helpless." "No," she said fiercely, "but the world is cruel, and it will not forgive this." He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the cottage like a caged animal. So what? I just stay nothing forever? Hide behind you until I rot? That's not what I said, Celeste replied, softer now. We'll be careful. We'll be smart. She did not say we'll survive, because even then she was no longer certain. From that night on, she watched him differently. Every triumph was shadowed by fear. Every step upward tightened the knot in her chest. Dominic trained harder than ever, and the pack began to notice. Not just his strength, but his discipline, his strategic mind. He rose through the ranks with speed that made elders murmur in approval. Celeste remained in the background. She patched his wounds, managed his meals, spoke when needed, and stayed silent when silence served him better. She was invisible by design, because someone had to be. When the Alpha King's court announced a formal gathering, Celeste felt the shift in the air before the words were spoken. Power had a scent to it, sharp, electric, undeniable. That was when she saw Victoria. The Alpha King's sister entered the hall like moonlight given shape. Graceful, composed, her wolf calm and luminous beneath her skin. The pack watched her with reverence and envy, every movement weighed with expectation. She was everything Dominic could never safely claim. And yet, his eyes followed her. Celeste felt dread coil low and cold in her gut. The announcement came days later, delivered as if it were a blessing rather than a threat. A union, a strengthening of bloodlines. Dominic, newly elevated to Beta, chosen as a worthy match. The room erupted in approval. Celeste did not move. Her ears rang, her vision narrowed. All she could hear was the echo of Dominic's confession in the candlelit cottage. I can't give them children. That night, in the suffocating darkness of the tomb, the memory wrapped around her like a noose. She lay on the cold stone floor, fingers trembling as they drifted to her abdomen. Flat. Empty. In their world, the womb was not just flesh, it was promise. Power, continuation, lineage meant survival. Without it, you were expendable. A shudder tore through her. Dominic had known the risk. He had known it and chosen ambition anyway. And now, sealed in stone, Celeste understood something he never had. This secret was not just dangerous, it was lethal. She pushed herself upright, back scraping against the wall, breath shallow. The memories continued to bleed through. The way Victoria had smiled at Dominic, open and hopeful. The way the pack had looked at him with newfound respect. The way lies had already begun to take root. He's going to destroy her, Celeste realized, and himself. Her chest burned with a mix of terror and fury. She had shielded him from hunger, from fists, from cruelty. But this was a storm no amount of sacrifice could stop. In the darkness, Celeste closed her eyes. I won't let this happen, she whispered, though no one could hear her. Her wolf stirred, weak but resolute. She knew what she had to do. And for the first time in her life, protecting Dominic meant standing against him. When she escaped this tomb, when, not if, she would confront him, and she would force the truth into the light, no matter the cost. The confrontation happened at dusk. The sky was bruised purple and red, the kind of evening that made the forest feel restless, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Celeste waited inside the cottage, arms folded tightly across her chest, listening to Dominic's footsteps approach. Each step felt like a countdown she could not stop. When he pushed the door open and saw her standing there, his expression hardened instantly. What's wrong? He asked, already defensive. Celeste did not bother with pleasantries. You're going to tell them. Silence fell like a blade between them. Dominic laughed once, sharp and incredulous. Tell who what? You know exactly what, she said, voice steady though her heart was pounding. The pack, Victoria, the Alpha King. You're going to tell the truth about your condition. His eyes darkened. You've lost your mind. I've saved your life, she snapped. Over and over again, and I am trying to do it again. He stepped closer, towering over her now, anger radiating off him in waves. This isn't about saving me. This is about you not being able to stand seeing me rise. The words struck harder than any blow. Celeste stared at him, stunned. How dare you? Oh, don't pretend, Dominic shot back. All these years you've kept me dependent on you. You liked being the martyr, the selfless sister. Now I finally have something, someone, and suddenly you're afraid. Fear flickered through her, quickly replaced by fury. Everything you are, she said quietly, is because I stood between you and the world. And I never asked you to, Dominic roared. I never asked you to starve, or take beatings, or throw your life away because of me. No, Celeste agreed, her voice trembling now. You didn't ask. You accepted. The air between them crackled, thick with years of unspoken resentment. You think I don't know what they do to wolves like me? Dominic continued, pacing like a trapped animal. You think I don't know what happens if this gets out? They'll strip me of everything. Rank, honor, my future. And if it doesn't? Celeste shot back. If you lie your way into a mating that will destroy an innocent woman? If the truth comes out later, which it will, you won't just fall, you'll take everyone down with you. Dominic stopped pacing. Slowly he turned to her, eyes burning. You're jealous, he said coldly. That's what this is. You couldn't get a mate, so now you want to ruin mine. The accusation felt like acid. Celeste laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. I rejected mates because I was raising a child who wasn't mine, she said. Because you needed me alive and standing. Because I believed in you. Dominic's jaw clenched. Then believe in me now. I can't, she said. Not when you're building happiness on a lie that can kill. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The candle on the table flickered violently, as if reacting to the tension. Finally, Celeste straightened. I'm giving you 3 days, she said. Dominic blinked. 3 days for what? To choose the truth, she replied. Tell them yourself or I will. Those are your options. His face drained of color. You wouldn't. I would, she said, though her heart shattered as she spoke the words. And you know why? Because I love you enough to stop you from destroying yourself. Dominic stared at her, as if she were a stranger. You've already decided I'm the villain, he said bitterly. No, Celeste whispered. You're deciding that right now. She turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last, leaving him alone with the echo of her ultimatum. That night, Dominic did not sleep. He sat in the darkness, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles ached. Fear crept through him, cold and insidious. Images played in his mind, elders' faces hard with judgment. Victoria's eyes filled with horror, his rank stripped from him in front of the pack. Exile. Death. Everything he had sacrificed for, everything Celeste had sacrificed for him. Gone. She'll destroy me, he thought, and the fear twisted into something uglier. Betrayal. By dawn, love had been drowned out by terror. When the idea came to him, it arrived quietly, almost gently, like a mercy. Just for a little while, he told himself. Just until the mating ceremony was over. Once he was secure, once everything settled, Celeste would understand. She always did. He would protect what he had built, even if it meant silencing the sister who had once been his shield. By the time the sun rose fully, Dominic had made his choice, and somewhere deep inside him, something irreparable broke. The night Dominic suggested they run together, Celeste almost said no. Almost. The moon hung full and bright, silvering the forest the way it had when they were children, when running had been escape instead of ritual, joy instead of obligation. Nostalgia softened her instincts, dulled the sharp edge of the dread that had lived in her chest since their last argument. One last run, Dominic had said, voice quiet, careful. Like old times. Old times. The word opened a door in her she hadn't realized was still standing. So she shifted. Fur rippled over skin, bones stretching, reshaping, the familiar rush of power grounding her in something truer than pain. Dominic shifted beside her, his wolf larger now, broader. But the way he shook himself, impatient, eager, was achingly familiar. They ran, the forest blurred into streaks of shadow and moonlight. Leaves tore beneath their paws. Wind burned sweet and cold in her lungs. For a few heartbeats, Celeste forgot fear, forgot secrets, forgot the way her brother had looked at her like an enemy. They raced the way they used to, shoulder to shoulder, pushing each other harder, laughing without sound. Dominic pulled ahead, then slowed deliberately, letting her catch up. A childish challenge, a peace offering. Her wolf accepted it. When the stone markers of the family tomb emerged from the trees, ancient and solemn, Celeste slowed, unease returning like a chill along her spine. "Why here?" she asked as they shifted back into human form. Dominic didn't answer right away. He pushed open the heavy doors instead, the hinges groaning in protest as they parted. Cool air spilled out, thick with the scent of earth and memory. "Because this matters," he said finally. "Because they matter." Inside, the tomb was quiet, reverent, stone walls etched with names, the resting place of their parents, warriors, protectors, the last people who had ever made Celeste feel safe without condition. Dominic turned to her, eyes dark, earnest. "I was wrong," he said, "about everything." Hope flared, sudden and dangerous. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the dead themselves were listening. "I should have listened to you. You've always been right. You always knew what was best for me." Celeste's chest tightened. "Dominic!" "I wouldn't be here without you," he continued, cutting her off. "Without everything you've done. I owe you my life." He reached for her hands, clasping them between his palms. His skin was warm, solid, real. "I swear," he said, turning toward their parents' graves, pulling her with him. "Before mother and father, I swear I will always love you. I will protect you for as long as I live." Tears burned behind Celeste's eyes. This was what she had wanted. Accountability. Truth. The brother she remembered. She stepped forward and hugged him, pressing her cheek to his shoulder. His scent filled her senses. Home, childhood, blood. Relief loosened something in her chest. Then pain bloomed at her neck. Sharp. Burning. Her breath stuttered. Her vision blurred violently, the stone walls tilting, spinning. She pulled back instinctively, confusion flooding her face as her fingers brushed the sting. Dominic was holding a needle. "No," she whispered, legs suddenly unsteady. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I can't let you ruin this. I've worked too hard." Her knees buckled. Dominic caught her, arms tightening, not to steady her, but to restrain her as the poison surged through her veins. Her wolf howled in her mind, panicked and suddenly weak, its strength dragged down into mud. "You promised," she gasped. "I still love you," he said desperately. "This is temporary. I'll come back for you after the ceremony. When everything is settled, you'll understand." Her body gave out completely. Darkness swallowed her as she felt herself lowered to the stone floor, the cold seeping instantly into her skin. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness claimed her was the grinding sound of stone moving. The memory shattered. Celeste screamed. No sound left her throat, but the scream tore through her anyway. Raw, silent, endless. She clawed at the darkness as memory cemented into truth, her chest heaving, her lungs burning. The doors had sealed shut. The echo of stone slamming into place rang through the tomb like a coffin lid being nailed closed. "No, no, no!" She stumbled to her feet, slamming her fists against the wall. Pain exploding through her hands. "Dominic! Let me out!" Nothing answered her but silence. Outside, Dominic pressed his forehead against the stone, breathing hard, heart hammering like it might break free of his ribs. He stayed there longer than he intended to, guilt clawing up his throat. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, to the stone, to the dark, to the sister he had entombed. "I won't let this be for nothing." Then he turned away. Each step back through the forest felt heavier than the last. But he did not stop walking. Inside the tomb, Celeste slid down the wall, her body shaking, her sobs finally breaking free. Betrayal cut deeper than any blade, because it came wearing the face of love. The boy she had shielded, the man she had believed in. He had buried her alive. And as the darkness closed in, grief crushed her breath from her chest, leaving only one terrible certainty behind. Nothing would ever be the same again. Darkness did not loosen its grip. It pressed in on Celeste's senses until she could no longer tell if her eyes were open or closed. Time became meaningless. Minutes stretched into hours, or perhaps days, measured only by the slow drag of breath through foul, stagnant air. Panic clawed at her chest in violent waves, rising so fast it stole her breath, threatened to drown her from the inside. No, not like this. Her wolf thrashed inside her mind, wild with fear, scraping at the edges of her consciousness like claws against bone. It wanted to run, to break free, to tear through stone with teeth and fury. "You can't," Celeste thought fiercely, dropping to her knees as dizziness washed over her. Not now. She pressed her palm flat against the cold floor and bowed her head, forcing herself to breathe. In, out, slow. Pain pulsed behind her eyes. Her throat burned with thirst. The poison Dominic had injected still lingered, leaving her limbs weak and her thoughts sluggish. "Listen to me," she whispered, voice hoarse. "If you panic, we die." Her wolf whimpered, but it stilled. Celeste stayed like that for a long while, grounding herself in sensation. The ache in her joints, the grit beneath her palms, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She counted each breath until the terror dulled into something sharper, something colder. Resolve. She pushed herself upright, swaying slightly, and forced her mind to work. Panic would kill her faster than hunger, faster than thirst. She needed light, warmth, time, fire. The word flared in her thoughts like a spark. Celeste dropped to her hands and knees and began to crawl, feeling her way along the tomb floor inch by inch. Her fingers brushed against loose stones, bits of gravel, brittle fragments of wood left behind by age and neglect. Dry leaves crumbled to dust beneath her touch, ancient, preserved by darkness. Hope stirred. She gathered everything she could find, piling it carefully against the wall. Her hands shook with exhaustion, skin scraped raw as stone bit into flesh. Each movement sent sharp protests through her muscles, but she ignored them. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "Fire is patience," he had once told her as a child. "Rush it, and it dies." Celeste struck stone against stone again and again, arms trembling with effort. Sparks flashed briefly, mocking her, vanishing before they could catch. Sweat stung her eyes. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Again. Again. Her vision swam. For a moment she thought she saw her mother standing nearby, watching with quiet pride. The hallucination nearly broke her. She blinked hard, forcing the image away. "You're not real," she whispered. "But I am." The spark caught. A thin thread of smoke curled upward, followed by a tiny trembling flame. Celeste let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, and carefully fed the fire, shielding it with her body until it grew strong enough to stand on its own. Light bloomed across the tomb. Shadows leapt and twisted along the walls, revealing the truth of her prison. Stone blocks fitted together with brutal precision. Bones stacked reverently along one side, names carved into the walls. The air warmed slightly, the oppressive weight lifting just enough for her lungs to expand more fully. She laughed then, a short, broken sound that bordered on hysteria. "I'm still here," she murmured. The fire did not just give her light. It gave her time. Time to think. Time to endure. Hunger gnawed at her stomach relentlessly. Thirst burned until swallowing became painful. At times, the darkness beyond the fire's reach seemed to whisper, coaxing her to lie down, to sleep, to let go. She refused. Grief came next, heavy and suffocating. It rose in her chest without warning, dragging memories with it. Dominic's laugh, his promises, the boy who had sworn to protect her before he sealed her inside a grave. Tears slid down her cheeks, hot and silent. But grief, like fear, did not last forever. Something else took its place. Anger, cold, focused, enduring. Celeste rose unsteadily and approached the wall opposite the sealed doors. She studied the stonework with a critical eye, noting the cracks where time had weakened the mortar. One section looked thinner than the rest, a flaw hidden in shadow. Her pulse quickened. She picked up a loose rock and struck the wall. Pain shot up her arm. The sound echoed uselessly, swallowed by stone. She struck again. And again. Her hands split. Blood smeared across the rock, slick and dark. Her nails cracked, tore away, leaving raw, screaming flesh behind. Each blow sent fire through her nerves, but she welcomed the pain. Pain meant she was alive. "I won't disappear," she growled, striking harder. "I won't be erased." Hours blurred together. She worked until her arms shook uncontrollably, until her vision narrowed to a tunnel. At one point, she slumped against the wall, sliding down to the floor, chest heaving. "Get up." She forced herself to stand. With a final desperate blow, a small chunk of stone crumbled away. A crack opened, narrow, jagged, but real. Air rushed through it. Fresh, cool, alive. Celeste froze, then pressed her face close, inhaling deeply. The scent of forest flooded her senses, damp earth, leaves, night. Her lungs burned with the effort of breathing, but she laughed through it. Tears streaming freely now. She wasn't free, not yet. But the tomb was no longer sealed. Celeste rested her bloodied forehead against the stone, breathing in life one precious breath at a time. "This isn't where I end," she whispered into the crack. In the flickering firelight, her shadow stretched tall against the wall. No longer a victim curled in the dark, but a woman standing on the edge of rebirth. The great hall glowed with firelight and celebration. Gold banners draped the stone walls, each embroidered with the sigils of strength and lineage. Music rolled through the space in low, rhythmic waves, drums echoing like a heartbeat beneath the chatter of the pack. Wolves crowded the long tables, laughter sharp and bright, cups raised in honor of a union meant to strengthen the kingdom. At the center of it all sat Dominic. The beta's cloak rested heavy on his shoulders, dark and richly woven, the sigil at his chest catching the light with every movement. Pride swelled in his chest when the crowd looked at him, when they nodded with approval, when elders smiled, when warriors clapped him on the back as if he were one of their own. "I earned this," he told himself. Yet beneath the weight of honor lay something colder. Victoria sat beside him, radiant in ceremonial white, her hair braided with moonstones that glimmered softly against her skin. She smiled often, easily, her joy unguarded. When she looked at Dominic, her eyes shone with warmth and trust that twisted something sharp in his gut. "I still can't believe this is real," she said softly, leaning closer so only he could hear. I've dreamed of this day since I was a girl. Dominic forced a smile. So have I. It was almost convincing. Victoria spoke of the future with an innocence that felt like a blade. A home near the forest edge, children with strong wolves and curious minds, a legacy built together. Each word tightened the noose around his chest. Guilt whispered, relentless, but ambition roared louder. Once I'm secure, he thought. Once I'm untouchable, everything will settle. He drank deeply, hoping the wine would dull the edge of his thoughts. It didn't. At the head of the hall, Alpha King Casper observed everything. He sat with effortless authority, posture relaxed yet alert, dark eyes missing nothing. Power clung to him, not loud or boastful but controlled, coiled. His wolf lay just beneath the surface, calm but watchful, sensing shifts long before words revealed them. Casper lifted his cup in acknowledgement as the crowd cheered again, but his gaze drifted, past the celebration, past the ritual dances, to the empty space beside Dominic, where Celeste should have been. The absence scraped at him, subtle but insistent. He remembered her refusal months ago, how she had turned him down without knowing who he was, citing responsibility, devotion to her brother. There had been no greed in her eyes, no calculation, only quiet resolve. She would not miss this day. Casper felt his wolf stir uneasily. When the feast slowed and conversation turned intimate, Victoria laughed lightly and glanced around the hall. "It's a shame Celeste couldn't be here," she said. "I was so looking forward to meeting her properly. The pack speaks of her so highly." Dominic's hand tightened around his cup. "She had an emergency," he said smoothly. "She had to travel out of town." The lie slipped out easily. Too easily. Casper's gaze sharpened. "How unfortunate," the Alpha King said mildly. "I expected she would be here." Dominic shrugged, forcing casual indifference. "She sends her blessings." Casper nodded, but his wolf growled low, displeased. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the subtle tension rolling off Dominic. The way his shoulders stayed too rigid. The way his eyes darted whenever Celeste's name was spoken. Later, when the music swelled again and the crowd's attention fractured, Casper rose and approached Dominic, clapping him on the shoulder. "You've done well for yourself," Casper said, voice warm. "Your family's reputation precedes you." Dominic straightened. "Thank you, my king." Casper's hand remained on his shoulder a beat too long. "Tell me, how is your sister truly?" Dominic met his gaze, heart pounding. "Well," he said, "she'll return soon." Casper smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I had hoped to speak with her again," Casper said quietly. "Once she rejected me, told me her duty was to her brother. I thought perhaps now, with that burden lifted, she might reconsider." The words landed like stones in Dominic's chest. "You wanted her as your mate?" Dominic asked, unable to keep the tension from his voice. Casper nodded once. "I still do." Fear spiked, sharp and immediate. The Alpha King's interest in Celeste was dangerous. Dangerous for Dominic's lies. Dangerous for the fragile future he was building on silence. "I'll speak to her," Dominic said quickly. "When she returns." Casper studied him for a long moment, then stepped back. "See that you do." As he turned away, Casper's wolf surged, restless and alert. Instinct screamed that something precious was out of place. Across the hall, Victoria laughed again, unaware of the shadow creeping closer to her happiness. Dominic sat frozen, sweat cooling on his skin. He told himself Celeste would forgive him when she saw how happy everything was. When she saw what he had secured for them both. She always understands, he thought. At the head of the hall, Casper lifted his hand subtly. Two servants approached at once, bending low to hear his quiet command. "Watch the beta," Casper said calmly, "and find his sister." The servants vanished into the crowd. Casper remained standing, eyes fixed on the celebration that suddenly felt far too loud. Somewhere beyond stone and song, his wolf knew the truth was screaming to be found. The tomb was eating her alive. Not all at once, not mercifully, but slowly, patiently, as if it had all the time in the world. Celeste no longer knew how many days had passed. Hunger had stopped screaming and settled into a dull, constant ache. Thirst was worse. Her tongue felt swollen, her throat raw and burning with every breath. The fire she had made still flickered weakly, but each hour it consumed more of the precious air, and she was forced to let it die for longer stretches, choosing breath over warmth. Her hands were ruined. Blood had dried beneath her nails, blackened and cracked. The skin across her palms was split and inflamed, every movement sending sharp reminders through her nerves. When she tried to strike the wall again, her arms trembled so violently she nearly dropped the stone. "Get up," she whispered to herself, though her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. She dragged herself toward the crack she had opened, pressing her face close, drinking in what little fresh air slipped through. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. So she tried something else. With shaking hands, Celeste gathered loose stones and hurled them through the narrow opening, one by one. Each throw stole more strength than the last, her muscles screaming in protest. The stones clattered somewhere outside, too far for her to hear where they landed. "Please," she rasped, not knowing who she was begging. "Someone see it." Sometimes she thought she heard voices beyond the stone, footsteps, laughter. Other times she saw things that weren't there, her mother's silhouette in the firelight, Dominic's shadow moving just beyond reach. She learned to close her eyes when that happened. Her wolf lay curled deep inside her, conserving what little strength remained, its presence faint but steady. Together they endured. At court, life moved forward as if nothing were wrong. Victoria counted the days by the moon. She smiled when she woke each morning, hopeful and bright, touching her belly as if willing life into being through sheer belief. Dominic watched her with a tightening chest, his guilt flaring sharpest in those quiet moments when she trusted him most. "It will happen," he told her gently, over and over again. "Some wolves take longer. My mother did." The lie tasted bitter, but he swallowed it anyway. When the full moon came, Victoria prepared carefully, bathing in scented oils, whispering prayers to the moon goddess. Dominic held her afterward, murmuring reassurances while his heart hammered painfully in his chest. Nothing happened. Days passed, no signs, no quickening, no bond stirring with new life. Victoria's smiles grew thinner, strained. She laughed less. At night, Dominic felt her turn away from him, shoulders tense with quiet fear. Casper noticed. He noticed the way Dominic avoided his gaze now, the way his answers came too quickly, rehearsed, the way tension clung to him like a second skin. At a private dinner, Casper casually remarked, "My sister seems troubled." Dominic's grip tightened on his cup. "She worries too much." Casper's eyes flicked to his hands. "Perhaps." The Alpha King said nothing more, but his wolf paced restlessly beneath his calm exterior. Every instinct he had was screaming that something was deeply, dangerously wrong. The full moon passed, still no pregnancy. Victoria wept quietly one night, blaming herself, her body, the goddess. Dominic held her, heart cracking under the weight of his deception. "It's not you," he whispered fiercely. "Never you." And yet the truth sat between them like a blade. In the tomb, Celeste's strength failed. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she lay curled on the cold stone floor, breath shallow, vision blurring. Her body shook with exhaustion she could no longer fight. "This is how it ends," a voice whispered in her mind. "No," she croaked aloud, forcing her eyes open. "Not yet." She dragged herself upright once more, fingers clawing weakly at the stone near the crack. Her head spun. Black spots danced in her vision. Still, she reached for another rock. The stone slipped from her grasp. Celeste laughed weakly, the sound breaking apart as it left her throat. Somewhere above ground, Dominic stood at the edge of the forest, heart racing, guilt finally outweighing fear. "I'll bring her out," he told himself. "I have to." The lies were unraveling too fast. Casper's watchful gaze, Victoria's growing despair, the way his nights were haunted by dreams of stone and screaming silence. He shifted and ran hard, the forest blurring past as dread clawed at his chest. When the tomb came into view, Dominic slowed, breath hitching. The stone doors stood ajar. Panic slammed into him like a physical blow. "No," he whispered. He rushed forward, throwing the doors open fully, and froze. Inside, the fire pit was cold and blackened, the floor smeared with blood. And in the far wall, where there had once been nothing but solid stone, a jagged opening gaped wide enough for a body to slip through. Celeste was gone. Dominic staggered back, heart pounding violently in his ears. For the first time since sealing the tomb, true terror took hold. Whatever he had buried in the dark had not stayed there, and the cracks in his carefully built crown had finally split wide open. Casper had learned, long ago, that silence could be louder than screams. It was the kind of silence that followed unease, the kind that crept beneath his skin and refused to be ignored. As Alpha King, he had mastered the art of appearing calm, while his instincts tore at him from the inside. Tonight, those instincts paced like a restless wolf trapped in a cage. Something was wrong. The reports from his servants were fragmented at first. Broken stones near the old family tomb. Signs of repeated disturbance. Blood, dried and smeared across rock where no hunt should have taken place. Casper did not wait for conclusions. "Bring me to her," he ordered. They found Celeste just beyond the tree line, collapsed near the jagged opening in the tomb wall as if she had crawled out of the earth itself. Her body was curled inward, arms wrapped protectively around her torso, breath shallow and uneven. She was filthy with dirt and ash, her hair tangled, her skin pale beneath streaks of dried blood. Casper stopped short. His wolf surged forward without permission, recognition slamming into him with bone-deep certainty. Her, not possession, not dominance, belonging. Something ancient and instinctive settled in his chest as he knelt beside her. He did not touch her at first, only observed. The injuries told a brutal story without words. Shredded palms, broken nails, fevered skin, the faint chemical scent of poison lingering beneath sweat and smoke. "She fought," Casper murmured. He lifted her carefully, reverently, as though the wrong movement might break something fragile and irreplaceable. Her head lolled against his chest, a soft, broken sound escaping her lips. For a moment, just one, he allowed himself to feel the rage. Then he buried it. "Prepare my chambers," he commanded. "Healers, now." Warmth returned to Celeste in fragments. The ache came first, deep, all-consuming, layered pain that told her she was alive whether she wanted to be or not. Then came scent. Clean water, herbs, linen warmed by fire, not the tomb. Her eyes flew open, light flooded her vision, soft and golden, filtered through tall windows. Panic surged instantly, her heart racing as she scrambled to sit up. And failed. A wave of dizziness crushed her back into the bed. "Easy," a voice said immediately, low, calm, unmistakably real. "You're safe." Hands steadied her shoulders, firm but careful. Celeste froze, breath hitching, every muscle coiled for flight or fight. She turned her head slowly. Casper sat beside the bed, his presence filling the room without overwhelming it. He looked different up close, less distant than she remembered, less untouchable. Concern shadowed his sharp features, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her wolf stir uneasily. Recognition flickered. "You," she whispered hoarsely. He inclined his head. "You're in my home." Her chest tightened. Memory tried to surface. Stone, darkness, fire, but she forced it back down, burying it beneath instinct. "What happened?" Casper asked gently. The question hovered between them, heavy with expectation. Celeste swallowed. Her throat burned. "I don't know," she said finally. It was not entirely a lie. Her mind felt fractured, memories jagged and dangerous. If she pulled too hard, she might shatter completely. Casper studied her carefully, as if weighing every breath, every pause. His wolf prowled beneath his skin, displeased, but he did not press. "You were found near the old tomb," he said. "You were injured, dehydrated, poisoned." Celeste's fingers curled slowly into the blankets. "I must have wandered," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "I don't remember much." Her wolf stirred faintly, uneasy, guarded, but did not protest. Casper's gaze sharpened, then softened. "Memory loss is not uncommon after trauma." Trauma. The word landed hard, but she did not react. "Rest," he said instead. "You are under no obligation to explain anything to me. Not now. Not ever." Something in his tone, unconditional, unassuming, made her chest ache unexpectedly. "Why am I here?" she asked. Casper did not hesitate. "Because you needed somewhere safe." Silence settled between them. Celeste shifted, her gaze drifting around the room, luxurious but restrained, power expressed through order rather than excess. She realized then where she was. "The court," she murmured. "This is your home." "Yes." Understanding dawned slowly. "That means—" She stopped herself before finishing the thought, jaw tightening. Whatever truths lay outside this room could wait. Casper noticed the change immediately, the way her shoulders squared, the way her eyes hardened. "You are not a prisoner here," he said quietly. "No one will force answers from you." She met his gaze then, something raw flickering behind her composure. "I won't stay long." "I would expect nothing less," he replied. For the first time since waking, her breathing eased. Casper rose. "Food will be brought. Healers will return later. I'll leave guards outside, not to watch you, but to ensure no one disturbs you." As he turned to leave, Celeste spoke without thinking. "Thank you." He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "You don't owe me gratitude." "No," she said softly, "but I give it anyway." Casper nodded once and left her to the quiet. Alone, Celeste lay back against the pillows, exhaustion dragging at her limbs. She stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. Not with fear this time, but with awareness. She was no longer buried, and the alpha who had found her had not demanded her truth. Yet. Somewhere deep inside, her wolf shifted, alert, watchful, recognizing the safety of waiting, and the danger of what would come next. Recovery came slowly. Celeste learned her limits the hard way, through the tremor in her hands when she tried to lift a cup, through the way dizziness crept in if she stood too fast, through the dull ache that lived beneath her skin, no matter how much rest she took. The healers came and went, murmuring softly as they cleaned her wounds and coaxed strength back into her body. Casper remained, not hovering, not demanding, simply present. Sometimes he sat across the room, reading reports in silence. Other times he walked with her through the garden when she was strong enough, matching his pace to hers without comment. He never asked again what had happened, never pressed for answers she was not ready to give. That restraint did more to unmake her than any interrogation could have. In the quiet moments, shared meals, the soft rustle of leaves in the evening air, something delicate began to form, a closeness born not of urgency, but of understanding. When Casper handed her a cloak before she realized she was cold, when he waited for her to finish a thought instead of filling the silence, her wolf stirred with cautious curiosity. So did her heart. She hated that part most of all, because even as warmth returned to her limbs, the truth burned hotter inside her chest. It demanded to be spoken. Victoria arrived on the 4th day. Celeste was seated near the window when she heard the familiar voice in the hall. Bright, musical, threaded with nervous hope. Her breath caught before she could stop it. Victoria stepped inside, her smile immediate and genuine. "Celeste, I've wanted to see you since I heard you were found." Before Celeste could respond, Victoria embraced her carefully, as if sensing her fragility. The contact sent a jolt through Celeste's chest. Not pain, but guilt. "You gave us quite a scare," Victoria said with a small laugh. "Dominic said you'd gone away unexpectedly. I'm just glad you're all right." The lie settled between them like poison. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Victoria continued, pulling back, her expression softening. "Everything has been overwhelming." Celeste nodded, forcing her face into stillness. Victoria's hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach. "The healers say it's not uncommon," she said quietly. "Sometimes the moon just takes her time. Dominic keeps telling me not to worry." Something inside Celeste twisted painfully. "I keep wondering if I'm doing something wrong," Victoria admitted, voice dropping. "If my body is failing him—" Celeste's nails dug into her palm. She thinks it's her. The urge to speak, to tear the truth free and lay it bare, nearly stole her breath. Her wolf pressed forward, restless, furious at the injustice. But this was not the moment. Victoria smiled again, brave and hopeful despite the fear in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "You feel like the sister I never had." When she left, Celeste remained by the window long after the door closed. The truth was no longer a weight she carried alone. It was a blade cutting into everyone else. That evening, Casper found her standing in the garden, staring at nothing. He joined her without comment, the quiet between them familiar now. "She came today," he said gently. "Yes." He studied her profile, the tension she could not hide. "You don't have to carry this alone." Celeste exhaled slowly. "If I tell you," she said, "everything changes." Casper's voice was steady. "Some things are meant to." The words slipped out of him before he could stop them. "I care for you, not because you were hurt, not because you were found. I cared before all of this, and I still do." She turned to face him, heart pounding. "I love you," Casper said simply. "I won't pretend otherwise." For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Celeste wanted to say yes. Wanted to lean into the safety he offered, the future he represented. Wanted to stop fighting. Instead, she stepped back. "I can't," she said, voice breaking. "Not yet." Pain flickered across his face, but understanding followed quickly. "I have to finish this," she continued. "The truth is hurting people who don't deserve it. If I stay, if I choose happiness now, I become part of the lie." Casper nodded slowly. "Then go," he said. "Do what you must. I will be here when you're done." That was what broke her. Before dawn, Celeste packed what little she needed. She did not look back as she left the court behind, her resolve hardening with every step. The truth wanted to be heard, and this time she would not silence it. The cottage looked smaller than Celeste remembered. Its walls sagged with age, the roof uneven, the door hanging slightly off its hinges, as if even the house had grown tired of pretending everything inside was whole. The scent of old wood and ash wrapped around her the moment she stepped inside, memories pressing in from all sides. Dominic was pacing. He froze when he saw her. For a heartbeat, relief flooded his face, raw, desperate, almost boyish. "Celeste," he breathed, "you're alive." She closed the door behind her carefully, deliberately. "I was," she said, "despite you." His relief cracked, confusion rushing in to fill the gap. "I went back," he said quickly. "The tomb was open. I thought you were dead." "You left me there," she replied. Her voice did not rise. That was worse. "For days." Dominic swallowed. "I was coming back for you, I swear it. I just needed time." "Time," she echoed softly. "That's what you took from me, along with my trust, my life." He took a step toward her. "We can fix this. You always help me fix things." The words snapped something inside her. "No," Celeste said. "That ends today." She straightened, forcing her trembling hands to still. "You're going to tell the truth. To Victoria, to the Alpha King, to the Pack. Then you will renounce your rank and leave this kingdom." Dominic stared at her, as if she had spoken another language. "You want me to destroy myself?" "I want you to restore what little honor you have left," she said. "That is the price." His face hardened. "You don't mean that." "I do." "You expect me to throw everything away after everything we sacrificed?" His voice rose. "After all I've built?" Her breath hitched. Years of swallowed pain surged up at once. "We." She laughed then, a broken, bitter sound. "What we built?" she asked. "I starved so you could eat. I bled so you could stand. I gave up my entire life so you could have one." Her voice cracked. Tears spilled freely now, unstoppable. "And when I finally said no, when I refused to lie for you, you buried me." Dominic faltered. "I didn't mean—" "You meant to silence me," she said fiercely. "You meant to erase me because I stopped being useful." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. From the doorway came a sharp intake of breath. Celeste turned. Victoria stood there, pale as bone, one hand braced against the doorframe as if it were the only thing holding her upright. "What did you say?" Victoria whispered. Dominic spun around. "Victoria!" "You sealed your sister in a tomb?" Her voice shook violently. "To hide the truth?" Celeste closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Yes," she said quietly. "He did." Victoria's gaze flicked between them, horror dawning slowly, cruelly. "The truth about what?" Dominic's mouth opened, closed. Celeste's chest burned, but she spoke anyway. "About why you can't conceive," she said. "About why he's been lying to you." The room seemed to tilt. Victoria staggered back a step. "No," she whispered. "That's not—" "Dominic said, he said whatever kept you quiet," Celeste replied gently. "Just like he tried to do to me." Victoria turned to Dominic, tears spilling freely now. "Is it true?" she demanded. "All of it?" He said nothing. That was answer enough. A sound tore from Victoria's throat. Half sob, half laugh. "You watched me blame myself," she said. "You held me while I cried. You let me think my body was broken." "I was scared," Dominic said weakly. "I didn't want to lose you." "So you destroyed everyone else instead," she replied. She turned and ran. "Victoria!" Dominic called, moving after her. Celeste stepped into his path. "Don't," she said. He stopped, chest heaving, eyes wild. "You've ruined everything." Celeste shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "You did." She stepped past him and out the door, the cool air hitting her tear-streaked face like a benediction. Behind her, Dominic's world collapsed in silence. She did not look back. For the first time in her life, Celeste chose herself. and the truth over the brother she had once protected with her soul. The pack did not need Celeste's voice to condemn Dominic. Truth moved faster than whispers ever had. By the next full moon, the great hall was silent in a way Celeste had never heard before, not with anticipation, but judgment. Dominic stood alone at the center of the stone floor, stripped of cloak and sigil, his shoulders bare beneath the weight of every eye upon him. The Alpha King's voice carried, calm and unyielding. By deception, by abuse of power, and by attempted murder, you are hereby stripped of rank, title, and protection. You are banished from this kingdom. Should you return, you will be executed. Dominic did not look at Celeste. Perhaps he could not bear to. Perhaps he finally understood that there was no shield left between him and consequence. The guards escorted him out, chains clinking softly, and as the doors closed behind him, the silence shattered into murmurs, not pity, but condemnation. The pack had always known how to turn its teeth on the fallen. Celeste stood unmoving at the edge of the hall, her spine straight, her heart strangely calm. It was over. Healing did not come all at once. Victoria did not speak for days after Dominic's exile. She stayed in a quiet wing of the court, eyes hollow, grief curling around her like a second skin. Celeste visited without forcing conversation, sitting beside her in shared silence, understanding that some wounds needed space before they could breathe. When Victoria finally spoke, it was a whisper. "I keep thinking it was my fault," she admitted, staring at her hands, "that if I had been better, none of this would have happened." Celeste reached for her then, gently, firmly. "It was never you," she said. "And it never was me either." They cried together that night, not just for what was lost, but for the women they had been forced to become too early, too painfully. In each other they found something steady. Sisterhood forged not by blood, but by survival. Slowly the sharpest edges dulled. Casper watched from a distance. He did not push, did not ask, did not claim. He ruled, he listened, he waited, just as he had promised. When Celeste joined him at council, he treated her as an equal. When she avoided him, he gave her space. When she met his eyes, something unspoken passed between them. Patience, respect, longing held carefully in check. It was Celeste who changed first. One morning, standing alone beneath the open sky, she realized the guilt no longer owned her. The belief that she had to suffer to deserve love, that had been Dominic's lie, planted years ago and watered by her sacrifice. She had paid enough. That night, the moon rose full and luminous, silver light spilling across the forest. Celeste felt it call to her, not with command but invitation. She found Casper at the edge of the clearing, as if he had known she would come. "I'm done running," she said quietly. He turned to her, eyes dark with emotion he did not try to hide. "Are you choosing yourself?" "Yes," she replied, for the first time. The air shifted. Her wolf surged forward, no longer hesitant, no longer wounded. Casper's answered in kind, powerful, steady, reverent. The bond snapped into place with a force that stole her breath. Light exploding through her chest as if the moon itself had reached down and claimed them both. She gasped, hands clutching his cloak as the connection settled. Deep, undeniable right. Casper exhaled shakily, resting his forehead against hers. "I would have waited," he murmured, "for as long as it took." "I know," Celeste said softly. "That's why I came." The forest seemed to bow around them, the night alive with approval. Power flowed through her, not borrowed, not earned through suffering, but claimed. She was no longer a shield. She was a woman who had survived betrayal, chosen truth, and stepped into love without fear. As the moon watched over them, Celeste lifted her chin, her wolf standing tall and proud within her. Not a martyr, not a sacrifice, but a queen at last, whole,